Hello everyone. Let's talk a bit about the latest news from RadCORE. Recently, we released is the new converter of VCL components to the Unigidi standard, which is the base standard, right, used by RadCORE to implement responsiveness and a series of other features. Well, we will be bringing another new feature in the next version, okay? Which will help, to further speed up, the process of creating responsive applications with RadCORE without the need to insert any code into your application and much less needing Bootstrap or HTML templates to achieve, the responsiveness result. For those who are not yet following RadCORE, RadCORE has its own responsiveness system, okay? Based on the same dynamics that Bootstrap uses, right? The idea that our screen, our container, right? It will have is 12 columns is divided, right, into 12 virtual columns, okay? I say 12 columns because it's the standard, right? The classic, okay? But RadCORE allows you to create this subdivision with as many columns as you want, right? But let's do here let's recall how RadCORE's responsiveness works, okay? So look, imagine that you have some components on the screen, okay? So I have here, for example, a uni label. I have a uni edit, okay? Imagine that we have these little guys here. I will create a copy here and another copy. I'm going to put 4. Okay, so imagine you have this on the screen, right? So this here today, right? How is RadCORE going to work, right? To apply responsiveness. Well, for each grouping, right, set, right, pair of components, right, a label, an edit, a label, a date time, a label, a combo box, okay? We are going to we are going to transfer these components into a responsive block, okay? Making that analogy, as I always like to do, it's as if you have a div. Inside this div, you have your label, your edit, okay? For those who understand a bit of HTML, they understand that to build something, you need divs. So there will be a larger div, then a smaller div with the label, another smaller div with the edit, right, and both inside a larger div. So here in RadCORE, we don't need to worry about this dynamic, right, of the HTML instructions. So how do I do it? Okay, so I will take my pairs of components, I activate my RC elements, and then I apply an action, which is the block by. Okay, so the block by will create a responsive block for me, initially with a column division structure. These nomenclatures here, I use the same nomenclature from Bootstrap to bring familiarity, okay? So we know that XS and SM are usually associated with mobile screens, right? Small screens, MD would be medium screens, and so on. RadCORE has some definitions that don't exist in Bootstrap, okay? Which would be the 4K and 8K. So look, here for us to have a quick notion, RadCORE will apply a responsive block to this pair of components, where when you are running your application on mobile, this block will be occupying the 12 columns in my responsiveness system. But when I am on medium screens and above, it will occupy 3 columns of my responsiveness pattern, right? So if we are going to do it here, already imagining that I will repeat this process for these 4 pairs, if I have 3 columns in each of the 4, 4 times 3, they will occupy the 12 columns. So let's quickly see the process where I manually take each pair and apply my responsive block without needing to code anything. and without needing to link an HTML template, right, to my application. Okay, so RadCORE created the block, right? So each responsive block received, you see, the instruction that is very similar to the bootstrap instruction. Okay, so each of these blocks received the responsiveness instruction. So if we compile this example project, right, let's compile it. Let's open our project here. Let's refresh here. And then we have, well, our pairs of components completely aligned on the screen, each occupying 3 columns out of the total 12 virtual columns. This here automatically, if I adjust my browser, it already applies the responsiveness. So folks, this was a quick reminder of how RadCORE's responsiveness works, where I can take components and apply my blocks, right? Or I can also take and add components previously assembled for RadCORE, right? So, for example, I can add here, look, composite components, right, that were created in RadCORE to also help you develop the application more quickly. So, look, I can place components for myself from here to create a search system, okay? I can create components here with RadCORE to set up the base like of a dashboard, right? So there are several ready-made components in RadCORE, components in quotes, okay folks, because actually everything RadCORE uses are native components from Uni GUI, okay? RadCORE does not add a new palette, just to remind us, okay? We are going to analyze here this. These components that I added, look, and you see that when rendering, you have a whole quality, okay, look, visual and 100% responsive. Okay, folks, so I don't need to add code to my application. I don't need to add a template to my application, all right? Well, but what new things will this video bring us, right? I mentioned our RC converter, which was released in the latest version of RadCORE. In the next version, we will be bringing another new feature. So the RC converter in the next version will complement, right? It was created for that. Okay, it will complement what new feature is coming. Okay, so what will be the new feature that we will bring? Well, I'm going to do an experiment here, right? Using our RC converter, okay? What am I going to do here for us to follow along? I took some examples, okay, from CBR, right? For those who don't know CBR, some users outside of Brazil, it's a suite of components aimed at commercial automation, a series of other features, okay? So I took these some examples of it. We are going to use these examples to demonstrate the application conversion. So as we can see here, I have a T-page control, a T-mask edit, a TEdit, and a T-list box, all components of the VCL, right? So what am I going to do here? I will start by giving a reminder, one more reminder of how the conversion of VCL worked before RadCORE. So I'll take here, for example, so we don't stretch the video too much, okay? I will only take these groups of components here that we are seeing, which are VCL components, and I will copy them to the desktop, okay? So I will do a copy here. I will go back to my application in RadCORE, open RC elements, and then I will come here to my action, which is VCL to UniGUI. Okay, so here I can convert my components that are not DBOL to DBOL and vice versa. Okay, so in this case, I will not convert to DBOL because my source is not DBOL and I want to keep it the same as the source. Okay, so I will click OK here, and then RadCORE has already converted those components that were originally VCL to the standard, right, to UniGUI, okay? So this was our conversion that we had before the RC converter. It was a conversion that I was doing manually, right? Screen by screen, form by form, bringing it here into RadCORE. And after I brought it, I would select, as we saw at the beginning of the video, the pairs of components and apply the responsiveness as we have already seen with the first example. So, I was taking each pair of components, okay, and I was applying responsiveness to, in the end, obtain a responsive screen, okay? Well, now we are going to demonstrate the feature that will come in the next version of RadCORE. I'll open our RC converter here. I'm going to look for the folder in our application. Okay, so I'm going to get here. I'm here on my drive D, going to my converter folder, the CBR examples. Okay, my TCP. I'll get where's my CMPJ consultation? Okay, which is the example we're going to work with. And I will simply, after pointing it out, give the conversion command. Okay, so the conversion of our components is done, right? I'll open our example there. I'll go back to Delphi, where the example of the CMPJ is, right? So what happened? No, since there was a change in the DFM, Delphi already criticizes here. Look, there was a change. Do you want to update? Yes, I updated. When updating the properties that no longer exist in Unique UI, Delphi itself will give that alert, right? I think everyone is already used to this type of message, right? When there's a component change or something like that, we just need to click ignore, okay? All right, and open, okay? Now, let's view our form that was migrated. So you see, look, everything is the same, nothing changes. But if I open here, if I click on my components, look, now it has become, look, the uni page control, right? It became the uni combo box, right? So it became uni edit, became uni list box. So I converted all the, right? The RC converter converted all the components in the folder where I pointed, okay? So guys, the RC converter, it does not aim to convert your form to the point where you can take the form, compile it in Nobody and run it. That's not the goal. It will speed up the conversion of these components so we can now use the components and integrate them into RadCORE and speed up the application of responsiveness. Okay? So now let's see how the application of responsiveness will be faster. Okay? I'm going to take all these components here. So I'm not going to take the one below. I'll just take this one so we can do the demonstration. And I'm going to copy it to the desktop, okay? So look, I'm taking all these components, copied them to the desktop. I go back to my RadCORE application, and now I'm going to bring them here to apply the responsiveness. So you remember that when I went to apply the responsiveness, I entered my BlockFi 2x2. But now, folks, we will have, look, the BlockFi clipboard, okay? So, do you remember that I selected several pairs of components simultaneously? So now look, by selecting the BlockFi clipboard and clicking OK, what will RadCORE do? It will implement globally all the pairs of components and apply the responsive block to each one. So imagine the time we will save in the migration and in applying responsiveness to all the components we are seeing here. So automatically, all our components receive the standard responsiveness. Okay, each one received here that standard information of 3 columns. Okay, and everyone here is responsive, right? Now, each each block, you will make the final adjustment because the responsiveness won't be able to guess what each of these components, what do you intend, right? For each of these blocks to actually occupy on the screen, right? So for example, I have here, look, this sequence up here, right? Look. So imagine that I want to take, look, this block, Okay, look, this block and this block, I know they are small. So I will take these 3 blocks here and I will now manually adjust them so that instead of each occupying 3 columns, each occupies only 2. Okay, look, so I do this. Okay, so now I have 2 columns. Okay, so each one here is now occupying only 2 columns. So I have 2 plus 2, 4 plus 2, 6. Let's do that little calculation of 12, right? How much is left? 6 more are left. And my company name, since it is a field that in practice is more extensive, I want it to occupy 6 columns. Okay, since the other 3 here are occupying the remaining 6. So look, I will update it here to 6 columns. I will compile our example. Let's give our refresh here and done. See how easy it is, folks, to apply responsiveness? Okay, so now I quickly converted my project, brought my components, placed the responsive blocks, and then I make my final adjustment to say that each block will occupy X columns, okay, when they are, responsive. All right, folks, a big hug and see you next time.